Will democracy survive in the next couple of years?
And essentially, we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations: Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center in Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Firefly Credit Union, with locations throughout the Twin Cities, has proudly served Minnesotans since 1925. Firefly guides its members forward by delivering customized financial solutions to improve their lives in all aspects of banking. Firefly Credit Union, they light the way with life illuminated. Edina Eye, Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years. Now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services but dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns. This is Alan Miller, the usual host, and we have 2 very special guests today, and I'll introduce them one at a time. First, a person who is known certainly nationally, twice Miss Minnesota, runner-up Miss America. You've known her from TV, you've known her from infomercials, you've known her from movies, you have known her from radio, and in addition to all that, she's a terrific animal lover. And let's welcome Nancy Nelson. It's so great to finally have you on the show.
Alan, it is just nice to be with you wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you.
And we also have a double header here because we're very fortunate. Speaking of names that are known nationally, here's a name that is known internationally. Father Harry Burry, who has 2 books out, I think a 3rd on the way, but I'm not sure, is known as the Maverick Priest in one of them. And he is the same individual, and we'll talk about it, who led Vietnam War protests and has been involved in so many anti-violence protests up to and including the horrible murder of George Floyd just 26 days ago here in Minnesota. But I especially am really pleased to have Father Harry on because as we see throughout not only the country but the world, people reacting, have we finally hit a tipping point where we might move forward with our humanitarian needs and our democracy?
Well, first of all, Ellen, I want to thank you for this interview. It's an honor to be interviewed by you and with Nancy Nelson. So that's a real joy for me, and thank you for this opportunity. And yes, I'm terribly saddened by the murder of George Floyd. It touches my heart, brings me to tears. I've been to the 38th in Chicago where he was murdered, prayed there for him, and I've been in a number of demonstrations in Minneapolis and St. Paul during these times since he was murdered. But to be more precise into your question, yes, I think that this is a real beginning of people taking a look at how violence needs to be eliminated. Violence has no place in our societies, and we need to get rid of it as much as possible. And I think this is a catalyst for doing that. So as much as I'm saddened by the killing of George, I'm heartened by the fact that so many people have stepped up and said, enough is enough.
And actually, we have seen the reaction in some police departments in some cities around the country, where in the last several weeks, officers who have misbehaved, who have been guilty of violence, who have continued to really, particularly use violence against African Americans and minorities, have been not only fired, but have been brought up on criminal charges. And I can only hope that this is a start of something that can make us proud, because in my estimation, there's not much in this country in the last 3.5 years that we can be proud of. And that starts at the top. And, you know, Nancy is out there, certainly very active politically and speaking up and being outspoken. And Nancy, where do we go from here?
I want the signs out there to change from marching for George to keep marching to the polls. All of this demonstrating is so remarkable and so wonderful, and it seems to have been not even a tipping point. It's as if we were standing on the edge of a precipice for a long time and we refused to look down, and in 1 second we were pushed off and we had to figure out how to fly from it. And our flying is our demonstrating and our saying the laws have to change and the systemic attitudes need to change. And all of that marching and everything that's happening, we know, gentlemen, everybody knows, at the end of the day, is going to have been wonderful and begin a change, but the real change does not happen when your dog barks when you're on television. Buddy, come here, we're on TV.
I said you were an animal lover, but
buddy, come here. We're on television. You have to stop barking. Come here, darling. What has to happen now is we have got to go to the polls. If all of those remarkable people in the streets, maybe who have never bothered to vote before, don't vote, none of this at the end of the day is going to matter, because it's the lawmakers who change the laws, who change this country for certain. So now the signs have to say, march to the polls. And we have to do everything we can to see that everybody votes. That's going to be the conclusion of what has just begun.
particularly in this time of pandemic, we have to make sure that people transcend their fears and get to the polls, or they utilize in the many states that allow it, voting absentee and utilizing the mails to vote, but they must vote. You know, something you just said, you said we're standing on a precipice. About a month ago, I wrote an article which neither of our local papers published, but it started out by saying our society is on a precipice right now. And I really think we are. We have seen conduct from the executive branch and actually from the head of the well, Barr is not a judicial branch. He's really the head of the executive branch also. But conduct which is so unbecoming human beings, let alone people, that we must take this country back, because if we don't, we're going to lose it. And Father Harry, you are someone who chained yourself to the gate at Saigon. You are someone who's been arrested time and again for peaceful protests. You are someone who was arrested when you tried to pray in the Pentagon in 1969. And I think you are just the person to lead us forward in this. And what do you see as our path forward, and what do we have to do? Because we have a large audience to this show, and I know they're going to watch it. And they're going to watch it not for me, they're going to watch it because of Nancy and because of you. And what do we do to step forward?
Well, Ellen, our country faces three significant challenges. One challenge is our health challenge of the virus, and another is the our lack of law. We have a challenge to the law of this country with our Attorney General, and it's with these kinds of crises that we need to change leadership. And what Nancy's talking about is changing leadership, and that's so significant and so important. Underneath it, at the very foundation, we need to change, in my opinion, we need to change two fundamental assumptions. And the first assumption is that nobody should get anything for nothing. As long as we have that assumption, we're not going to be able to make huge changes, because this is what is needed, is significant systemic changes, and we won't make them unless we change the way we think and feel. So first of all, we must come to believe that it's okay to give people things even if they don't appear to deserve it. And the second cultural change is that we need to realize that punishment is not the best way to change wrongdoing, to prevent wrongdoing. We have been following that idea for centuries, and look what has happened. You have domestic violence, you have gang violence, you have national violence, and you have international violence or war, all because we want to get even and punish people for what we believe is justice. And we need to move away from thinking that justice means punishment.
Harry, Alan, if you don't mind, Harry, because you and I talk all the time, I don't want the first assumption you said to sound confusing. You said, and I believe what you meant, is that you want us to stop assuming that people don't deserve something because they haven't earned it, that we have to be more generous in our willingness to help people and not close them out because I got mine, you should get yours. Is that what you said?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that for me.
Buddy, you have to stop, darling. And Alan, the other thing, if you don't mind, I shouldn't be interrupting, but I don't want to go away from the voting. One of the things I've been working on very much as a delegate to the state convention is I want to be sure that everybody votes absentee. And the way we assure this is so simple. All you have to do, Google absentee voting Minnesota. In 1 second, up comes a thing that says absentee vote. Click. And up comes a page that says, give me your name, give me your address, give me your driver's license or your ID number. You click, you're done. In about a week and a half, you get in the mail a sheet of paper that says, give me your name, give me that information again, and sign it. And now put it into the self-addressed stamped envelope. You put it in, you're sure that you check you want all elections, which would be the primary in August and the general election, of course, for president and other representatives in November. You check both of those, you put it in the self-addressed stamped envelope, and you never think about it again. And before those elections, it comes in the mail, you fill it out, you put it in the envelope, and it goes. It's the whole process will take you a total of 2.5 minutes. And please do it yourself, and then send that link to everybody you know. And if you know people in other parts of the country, look up their state, find the link for their state for them to do it. It is something we can all do, and absentee has to be important. We don't know what's going to be here in November. We don't know if it's going to be life or death if we stand in a long line. Don't roll the dice on that. This is too important an election. Absentee ballot, pass it on, pass it on.
And it's been made much easier here in Minnesota by the Secretary of State, Steve Simon, because he's done away with the requirement that you had to have it witnessed by a third party.
Right.
So that if you are a shut-in, if you're living alone, if you're being quarantined, whatever it is, you just are responsible for your own ballot. You don't need anybody else to attest to the fact that you are who you are. And we must, in a year, we've said several times in our lifetimes, this is the most important election that we've ever had. But the fact is, this is the most important election that we've ever had, simply because what's up this year is our democracy. And we must vote to take our democracy back and take it away from this criminal gang that has been shredding our Constitution and that has been working just in every way that's antagonistic to what we stand for and what we believe and what we feel is necessary. And we've done a good job here in Minnesota. I think our governor has done a very nice job. I know that the Republicans chastised him because he didn't open up. Well, look at what's going on in the South right now, of these states that did open up, and the absolutely chaotic conditions that they have there, where this virus is running rampant. And that is a direct result of irresponsible government, as opposed to what we've benefited from here. So you have such a history of doing things just like that. You rescued 3 of our pilots during I think the Vietnam War, if I'm not mistaken. Nobody asked you to do it, but your conscience and compelled you to do it. And you brought them home. You have certainly been at Mass with the late John Paul II, and you were very close with Mother Teresa. You also have been very involved in the Gaza Strip. And for that, I particularly commend you. Jewish, but not, in my case, but not certainly one who advocates anything but a 2-part solution to what's going on in Israel now. And I've spent substantial time in Israel, but I think that this government there is not representative of the average Israeli, as our government is not representative of the average American. And unless the Palestinians get a country of their own, which they're entitled to, and we work that thing out peacefully, it's just another area where we're going to have chaos that we don't need in a world that's already too chaotic, and where we have too many leaders who don't care for their people, but care for themselves, as we have here.
Alan?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Harry, I was going to say, this is Harry's wheelhouse here. He has spent so much time with them. Alan, you probably know, but the last time Harry was in Palestine and Israel, he was kidnapped at gunpoint. And we got a call, and I know Harry didn't know if he was going to survive that one or not. And he did, and he came home to us. But there has been no limit to the measure of Harry's giving, literally, of his own life and his own being to seek peace for all. And he's been passionate about the Israelis and the Palestinians for a very long time.
You know, similar to Bernie Sanders, who has advocated for the same things for 40 years, Harry has been out there, I know, in doing research for this interview, for peace for his whole lifetime. And at times it has ruffled the hierarchy of the church. And yet he has stuck to what he believes he is destined to do. And in a way, Nancy, so have you. Because there are a lot of paths that you could have taken after your really exposure to Miss America and things like that. But you chose to stay involved. You chose to exercise your conscience. You chose to fight for citizenship. You chose to fight for the people. And, you know, you have to be commended in that regard also.
You're very kind, but I must tell you, all of the credit goes to my mother and father. I was raised with an understanding that I had an obligation to always stand up for anybody who was bullied. If there was somebody in school who didn't have a friend, even if I was in the cool group and they might not have been, if I was at all, it was my obligation, joy, responsibility to be their friend. Never walk past an animal that is hurt. My mother and dad, lived that in the very fiber of their being. And then I had the extraordinary good fortune to meet a man who lived exactly the same way. My husband, Bill Carlson, was decency and kindness and compassion walking around on two legs. And if anybody is wondering what the relationship is with Harry,
I was going to bring that up. As a matter of
then
fact,
you bring it up.
you
Go ahead. Then you go ahead.
No, how did the two of you meet? And
I was in grade school at St. Helena's when Harry was a very young priest, and I used to get catechism from Monsignor Roan, and he was tough on the girls, and Harry was always over on the other side of the playground with the boys playing ball in his long robe, and I thought he was so cool. And then I went over to the University of Minnesota, and Harry was head of the Newman Center, the Catholic Center for Youth over at the University of Minnesota. And when my husband and I wanted to get married, Billy said to me, I would like a very dear friend of mine to marry us. And he had met Harry through common people that had worked at WCCO TV. And it turned out it was the priest I had known when I was in grade school. Harry married Billy and me. It was 50 years on June 13th. So it's been a lifetime together.
And it really has been a lifetime together.
It has been a lifetime together. Harry was in a protest march against Vietnam. The day, perhaps, was it, Harry, before Billy and I got married? And we got a call from Harry and said, you guys, I have one call, and you're my call, and I'm in jail. I've been arrested. And we're getting married tomorrow. No, you can't do that. We called our friend who was going to be at our wedding, Ronnie Meshbesher, and Ronnie went down to the courthouse and got Harry out so he could marry us the next day. And Harry, there's a beautiful story about a Jewish lady who was in the courtroom when the judge said he was going to place a bail amount and you didn't have it. You have to tell Alan what happened.
Yeah, the judge gave a bail of $600, and of course I didn't have $600. And this Jewish lady came up and paid the $600. I didn't know her from, I've never met her, and she didn't know me, but she used to correspond with the very famous monk in Gethsemane, Thomas Merton. And so that, I don't know, maybe that was what motivated her to give the 600, which I gave back after I was declared not guilty.
She didn't have to know you, Harry. All she had to do was know the story and know who you were. And that was just another angel on your shoulder, as you have had many angels on your shoulder.
Oh,
fortunately,
yes.
for all of us, over 90 years now. And I realize we're actually winding down this interview already, although I find it hard to believe that we get used up most of our time. So I'm going to ask each of you for a final message in the few minutes that we have left. Let's start with Nancy.
We have the opportunity to actually make huge changes in the United States of America. And for all of us who have wanted to do that for a lifetime, this is the time. Don't let it pass. If all you can do is pick up a telephone, if all you can do is send in an absentee ballot, that's a great deal. But this is the time to do it. Be a part of the change. It is an exciting, extraordinary time in American history, and it's a terrifying time. Don't get arrogant. We could lose this. We could lose it, and Donald Trump could win again. Make a difference.
And he will do everything he can to see that we lose it, shredding all righteousness in doing it. Harry, your final word here.
Ellen, I really appreciated the fact that in this program you've emphasized one's conscience. And our church has always taught that the conscience is the proximate norm of morality. So that's what gave me the strength and the grace, perhaps, to stand up even to church authorities during the Vietnam War and other times, was that I was taught that I should follow my conscience no matter what. We need to have an educated conscience, but in the end, God only looks at our conscience to do what we believe is right. And so that's what we've been trying to do, Nancy and I.
Well,
And
this can't be the end of it. We've got to have you back and continue these discussions, and perhaps have a celebration on Access after November 3rd.
okay.
That bark that you heard was my Katie answering. Dog lovers certainly supreme. And thank you both, Nancy Nelson and Father Harry Burry, for a wonderful interview. Good luck, stay safe, wear your masks, and get out the vote.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you for what you do. It matters so much. Thank you.
Namaste.
Looks good.